Zoom. All right. Welcome to Taxes and Retirement Live. We got a great one for you this week. I'm here with special guest Devin Carroll. Hello, Devin.
Hey, Andy. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, as always. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
So,
fun times.
Yeah, these things are always fun. I think you'll enjoy it.
Nothing like Social Security, right?
Oh, it's wildly exciting, this topic.
It is. No, it really is, though.
Yeah.
It really is.
So just briefly for everyone in the crowd here, Devin Carroll is a man, a myth, a legend in Social Security. He is the content creator / owner / Social Security expert extraordinaire behind his YouTube channel, Devin Carroll, with close to 300,000 subscribers at this point. Lots of great videos, fantastic content. He's also written 2 books, Social Security Basics and The Hero's Penalty, both of which are currently under revision. So Devin, I'm super pumped to have you on here to share your knowledge with us.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. We make a joke. We say that Social Security sounds super exciting, and we kind of say that tongue in cheek because most people think that it's not. But the truth is, Social Security is pretty exciting if you think about what it offers. It's a pretty big program that gives off a lot of retirement income, and unfortunately, a lot of people make decisions about Social Security without being fully informed, and they just think it's a government program. I get what I get, and that's all. But in fact, I was just helping a guy yesterday, a fellow up in Seattle.
Okay.
And he's been going now for a couple of years. He has a wife and a daughter at home, and they've been getting the wrong benefit for 2 years. All 3 of them have been getting the wrong benefit for 3 years now, or for 2 years. So, it's not just you get what you get and that's it. You really have to know these rules so you can spot mistakes and then step out and fix some of those mistakes.
Yeah. No, it's true. So, all right, before we get going, Devin, I got this bit I do where I run through a few dad jokes, and I got to do a quick disclaimer, but let me start with the jokes. So, Devin, I stayed up all night wondering where the sun went, and then it dawned on me. You see that? These are terrible. These are terrible, Devin. Is this thing on? Hello. All right. What do you call a typo on a headstone, Devin?
I don't know. Tell
me. Grave mistake, of course.
A grave mistake.
Yep.
How did I not know?
They get better. There's one more. So, Devin, this whole pandemic's kind of got me feeling down. So I was feeling depressed. So my wife put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Earth." That meant the world to me.
Yep. That did get better. Oh, that went down.
All right. Yeah. Tip your waitress. Try the veal. All right. So everyone, this video is only general explanations and education. It's not specific tax, legal, or investment advice. Before considering acting on anything you see or hear here, first consult with your tax, legal, or investment advisor. All right. So Devin would like to, he's gracious enough to share with us 7 Social Security myths that, in quotes, need to die. With that said, the mic is yours, Devin, and I will pump you over questions as they come in.
Perfect. Okay. And if I don't see those, I've got quite the elaborate setup here in my studio. In fact, it's so elaborate that I find myself confused with what screen to look at from time to time. So if you send them over and I'm not seeing them, although you may be telling me, who knows, I'll just rattle right on by you. But let me give you a warning first, a little bit of a disclosure here, if I could. Sometimes these myths that we're going to talk about can be construed as political. And that's not the way I intend these at all. This is not a position that I'm taking one way or another. I think it's unfortunate, in fact, that some of these Social Security myths have been adopted by one side or the other. And I think, if someone's looking for the political angle, they'll probably find that I'm going to say something tonight that could be on both sides of it. So if you think I'm on one side, just wait, then you'll think I'm on the other side. But, these are myths that I hear over and over and over again on my YouTube channel, in the comments, especially.
Yeah.
These are things that people truly do believe. People really think that some of this stuff is real. And so, I want to do what I can to try to squash some of this stuff and keep it from being so believable. With that, how long do I have, Andy? I don't even know.
So we typically run an hour, give or take.
Okay.
Depends how the flow goes. I mean, these things have been as long as an hour and a half. Sometimes they cut short in 45 minutes. So,
Gotcha.
Do what you got, and I'll let you know as questions come in. Quick
I
comment.
have no idea how long it'll take.
Yeah. Comment from Joel, who I know is a wood turner. Love the wood vase behind your left shoulder, Devin.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Hey, that was a piece that I picked up, I think in Colorado. that was made out of an old fence post, and I just had to
Oh,
have
wow.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, super cool.
when the guy could have been lying to me, it's made out of a fence post, whatever. But he's telling me it was this old fence post that, one of the first ones that went up and down the plains there and had this story. And I thought, yeah, I've got to have that. But thank you, Joel.
Sounds much better with the story. Yeah,
it does. Yeah. Okay.
All right, so,
hang on just a second. I'm going to pull this up. It'll take me just a minute
surely
to get all my technology woes out of the way. And
I made myself a
I'm
wooden box here. Joel, if you're interested, there's no story behind it. I just wanted to build something. It's a box with a few different woods. I should probably make up a story. So if and when people do see it and ask about it, I have something cool to say.
Yeah, anyway, you should.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Andy. So I am about to hit share.
All right. So I'll give you a drum roll.
Oh, it's... I gotta,
my fingers are gonna get pulpy and sore. You better get this thing going live.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay. So I want to click the lock to make changes. And I'm thinking that nothing's happening on your side just from the way that you're looking there.
Oh, hold, there it is. I see it.
Are
7
we there
Social
now?
Security myths that need to die. Yep.
Awesome.
All right.
One thing I know is Social Security. One thing I do not know is technology.
Quite all right.
It gets me every time. So let's roll through these. And I know that a lot of your guests don't use slides, but I like to use it. I'm a visual learner, and I make maybe a mistake, but I assume that everyone else is a visual learner as well.
Yeah,
so
no, that definitely helps.
I want to go through these. All right, let's jump right in. So let's go with myth number 1. That is that illegal immigrants collect Social Security.
But they do, don't they?
Oh man, I get so many of these comments on my channel. I get them all the time. The belief that illegal immigrants can come into the United States and immediately receive Social Security benefits. That's just not true at all. What is true is that citizenship is not required for benefits. And that's where a lot of people say, see, I proved my point right there.
Yeah.
But no, citizenship is not required. You have to be lawfully present, and you have to pay in for at least 10 years. So, the short version of that is that you have to follow the same eligibility rules as everyone else does. You have to be here legally. You have to pay into the system for at least 10 years and get those 40 required credits. And at that point, you're eligible for benefits, as are any auxiliary benefits that are paid out, like spousal benefits or children benefits.
Now, how would spouse? So to be clear, you don't need to be a citizen. You do need to be here lawfully, and you need to have worked and paid your Social Security taxes on your wages here to accrue yourself the benefit, just like everybody else, right?
Just like everyone else.
Now, how do spousal benefits work? Is there any difference?
Okay. Nope. Nope. Same way. Yeah, there wouldn't be any difference at all, as long as you've earned that benefit, those benefits. Now, it does get a little tricky when those spouses don't live here.
Yeah. Okay.
That does add a different element to it, because there are some residency requirements, but that, what we're talking about here is that, there's a flood of people coming in across the southern border, and they are the ones that's to blame for the demise of the Social Security Trust Fund. That's the comment that I get a lot. That's the myth that I hear a lot. It's not true.
Okay. Quick question. So I don't know if you're best suited to answer this, but question from Kathy: what does lawfully present mean?
So that's actually something I've covered in the past, and that is a pretty sticky area, or a pretty deep area. That you're probably right, Andy. I'm probably not the best to cover that, but I do know that it's to be here lawfully, there is a process that has to be followed.
Yeah. Right. So I would assume if you're here not lawfully, or, off the record, you're getting paid under the table, you're not paying Social Security tax on those wages. So therefore you're not going to be entitled to any benefit. Right.
Well, yes and no. The funny thing is, if you look at the Congressional Research Service's report that they put out on the impact that illegal immigration is having on the Social Security Trust Fund, they actually found that there's a large number, and I don't remember what it is right off the top of my head, but there's a large number of Social Security taxes being paid in that's never getting matched up to an earner. And the reason
Interesting.
is that some of the illegal immigrants that are coming in, they're doing work, they're getting paid on a W-2 under a false social security number, a made up social security number.
Okay.
And let me tell you, that number was big that's coming in and
Interesting.
getting paid into the trust fund.
Okay. So I guess in one sense, it's good. I mean, there's extra money for the trust fund that's not being claimed upon, but it's evidence of a broader problem with far beyond the scope of this conversation, I guess. But
Oh yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but just to know, you can't just come across here, first stop Social Security Administration, say I want benefits and get them. Just
Right,
doesn't work
okay.
that way.
Okay. Well, great.
All right.
Good to know. All right. Cool.
Are you ready
Next.
for myth number 2?
Bring it.
No drum roll this time.
No,
Come
hold
on.
on.
All right.
Myth number
There
2.
Oh, it didn't happen. I hit the wrong button. Okay, here we go.
You want another one?
Well, I guess I might need one. And there we go. Okay. Now,
I love this. I love this one. I love it. Not in a good way, but I love it.
yeah, this is one that I know you hear it all the time too.
Yeah.
You know, the idea that somehow that years ago there was a law change and the government raided the Social Security Trust Fund. And that particular word is used in almost every situation. Raided, right?
Sounds so juicy.
Well, it does. I mean, it's a fantastic word, but they raided the trust fund. So what typically goes along with this is that the Social Security Administration, or the system, the trust fund, would not be facing insolvency if the government would have just kept their thieving hands out of it, you know, and there was this big pot of money sitting there and it was too tempting, so they had to get into it. But the truth is that there's never been any change in the way Social Security payroll taxes are used by the federal government. Okay. From the very beginning, the trust fund has always worked the same way, and it's never been put into the general fund of the government, as some people say, that there was a law change that Reagan made or Nixon or someone that put it into the general fund. And that just has never happened. It is absolutely a separate account. But what did cause some confusion was a change that happened back in 1969 when the transactions of the trust fund began to be included in a single budget along with all of the other functions of the federal government. But now this was changed back again in 1990. And now the trust fund is showing to have its own account in the federal budget. So none of these movements had anything to do with the actual operations of the trust fund. It was purely and simply a change of accounting practices. So but when Devin, you tell people this, it raises the big question, and that's where's the money, right?
But now, to play devil's advocate, is it not true that virtually, if not literally, every cent of the trust fund is borrowed to be used for general government spending?
Well, yeah. So in a sense, it is. And that's the next point. And that's where people get kind of disappointed after I tell them that first bit. And then I say, but, you know, if you're expecting a trust fund filled with trillions in cash, you're going to be disappointed here. Because for every dollar that comes in, you know, there is a special issue treasury bond that takes its place. Okay. And so effectively, when people say the Social Security Trust Fund is just full of IOUs, that's absolutely correct. Mm-hmm. That's really all that it has in it. But that's really all that it's ever had in it. In fact, there never was really much of a system put into place for the Social Security Trust Fund to collect revenues like that. It was only when the worker to retiree ratio got so imbalanced that they started having all of this excess come in.
So question from Dan. So then if that's the case, why in past years did certain politicians talk about implementing a quote unquote lockbox?
Yeah, it was good politics. There's no question it was good politics. Okay. This, as some of the other myths that we're going to talk about here, you often heard in campaign speeches. Okay. Where, you know, I remember, I think it was Al Gore who was one of the first ones who used to talk about the lockbox, and it's just not practical at all. You know, the idea that the money should go into the trust fund and just sit there is impractical. And here's why. I'll show you with this next slide. These IOUs, these special issue treasury bonds that are in there, they're earning interest.
Okay.
And if you look at the Social Security Trust Fund, if you look at that balance at the end of year 2017, it was 2.9-ish trillion. If that would have just been left in cash in the trust fund and not been on loan to someone collecting interest, that trust fund would have been worth about 2/3 less. And, I think it's safe to say if it was worth 2/3 less, it would run out a lot faster than.
So then the flip side of the rating narrative is that, yes, the government does borrow every dollar out of the trust fund to use it, but pays it back with interest. So in that sense, the Social Security system is better off by the money being borrowed than if it just sat there doing nothing.
Right. And,
Right.
these special interest treasury bonds, the rate of interest they receive is actually higher than the 30-year treasury bond. So,
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, it's receiving a rate that is above what the market is right now, the market for those sorts of notes. So, I think it's, we would have already seen benefit cuts if that money wouldn't have collected interest. It's pretty interesting way to look at it for sure. I did not realize that there had been that much interest paid either until I dug into it and started looking.
That's a good deal. Final, I guess, question / comment on this point from me is, has the government ever failed to pay the money back in full and on time to the trust fund, to your knowledge?
No, not that I know of.
Okay.
Not that I know that it's ever been needed either, because as those, we haven't gotten to a point yet. We'll see when this trustee report comes out, but we haven't gotten to a point yet where the revenues of the Social Security Trust Fund, including interest, Social Security taxes, Social Security, and the payroll taxes, all of the different revenue streams of the Social Security system, we haven't gotten to a point yet where that was less than the needed money to pay out in benefits.
Okay.
They've been forecasting this since 2016 that, well, next year's going to be the year. And then they would say, well, next year's going to be the year. So far, that hasn't happened. I do think that 2020 is probably going to be the first year, though.
Okay.
We've seen record unemployment. There's lots of factors. So I think it'll probably be easy to say that that's going to happen this year.
Okay.
Or last. Yeah.
Yes, right.
It's almost 2021. Oh, what year are we in?
Thankfully, less than a month left to this hot trash of a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Myth number 2. I like it. So what do you got on top for number 3?
So myth number 3 is somewhat related.
Okay.
Now that's Social Security is going bankrupt. Now, Andy, I hear this with people in many cases as justification for filing at 62.
Right. Because it's not going to be there. I'm going to take it while I can.
Right. I better get it while I can, and it's also another one that's used very often as a political motivator, to get people to vote a certain way. I'll fix Social Security and keep it from going bankrupt. You hear about it in just about every campaign. This last one was a little unique, but they didn't really need to talk about Social Security in this last one. There was a lot of other big issues that they talked about. Actually, Joe Biden had it on his page, what he was going to do with Social Security. Donald Trump never really even talked about what he was going to do with Social Security. It was just one of those weird campaigns where it never really came up on either side as an issue, which I think is odd considering how close we are to what we're about to talk about. And that is Social Security is going bankrupt, right?
Yeah.
So
scandalous.
Yes. If you look here's a few of the news headlines that I grabbed. Motley Fool, of course, they're a headline generator. They're always putting stuff out there.
Yeah.
But they specifically refer to not Social Security Trust Fund being empty, but literally Social Security being bankrupt. And here's 3 that I just grabbed, one after the other. The other was USA Today, and then Freedom Project, and there were several more. But the truth is, Social Security is not really going bankrupt. This is the pay-as-you-go system.
Right.
So the money that's coming in from taxes today is going to pay retirees today. So
yeah.
For example, Andy, the Social Security taxes you're going to pay in this year, it's going to help fund my dad's Social Security benefit and the taxes that I pay in, right? He's retired. He's on Social Security.
Yeah.
So it's pay as you go. And for a lot of years, there were more people paying in taxes than there were that were receiving those taxes. So there was more money coming in than needed to go out. And that excess is what started to accumulate in that trust fund that we were talking about just in that last myth. But
Okay.
now we have that worker to retiree ratio that has started to shift. And they're saying now that in the year 2020, that was this year, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But there's not going to be enough coming in to pay benefits. So they're going to have to start to pull from the trust fund. That's that dark green up there at the top. So right now, for every benefit dollar or for every benefit dollar that goes out, somewhere around 75% of that is from the revenue. And the rest of that is going to have to start coming out of the trust fund at some point. Now, it's not that exact ratio at first. It accelerates and gets bigger, but that's roughly the way that's going to start to work out. And by the year 2035, that trust fund asset's going to be gone. Aren't these some wonderful graphics, by the way?
These are top-notch stuff. These are significantly better than me holding up a piece of paper that says this video, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, well done, Devin.
No, I take some heat over my graphic design, but anyway, it gets the point across, right?
Yeah,
So
no, exactly.
in 2035, there's only going to be enough coming in to pay out about 75%. There's going to be a 25% cut if nothing's done. And
Right.
I mean, frankly, this keeps getting kicked down the road, which means that unfortunately, we may only have room for some drastic last minute action. And that's usually just not the best solution. But Social Security is not going bankrupt. If Andy, if you needed $10,000 this month to meet all of your obligations, and you go to your bank account and there's only $7,600 there, you don't fall on the floor wailing and gnashing your teeth saying, I'm bankrupt. No, you still have enough to meet a lot of your obligations. There's going to have to be some cuts somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And I think those cuts are going to come down to either decreased benefits or increased taxes, one or the other.
Yeah.
Maybe a combination of both. Could be decreased benefits to certain groups, could be increased taxes to certain groups. There's a number of things that I think is probably going to happen.
Well, so while we're on the topic, a couple of questions for you, but while we're on this particular topic about, decreased benefits, increased taxes, I get this question from virtually everyone I work with, and asks, will my Social Security be reduced? Should I be using the estimated, benefit amount shown on my statement? My feedback, for what it's worth, I'm curious your opinion. I feel like if you're already 60-ish or older, I just can't fathom they're going to cut your benefits. I think the younger generations, count on that. To what extent, I don't know. But what I think will happen for people already on Social Security is, I would assume that 100% of it becomes taxable as opposed to 85% of it at most. So they won't actually take it away on a gross basis, but it'll be taxed a little bit more. Now, not holding you to it, because I know this is all at the whim of politicians and whatever they decide to do on the 11th hour, but what's your view / opinion about what may shake out, particularly for people who are already, let's call it 60 and above?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things that could happen here. One, which I don't think is an efficient way to do it, but would probably be very popular, is a means testing system.
Okay.
If you look at at Social Security, it's already a means test system. They would just have to reconfigure some of it, right? So Social Security taxes, for example, not the payroll taxes you pay, but the actual income taxes you pay on benefits. It's absolutely means tested, because the more you have in other income, the more you pay in Social Security taxes.
That's a great
or
point.
in
Yeah.
taxes on your benefits. So there's already a means test there, so people with fairly low income pay zero. They get to keep all of their benefit. People with a higher income, they may not get to keep all of their benefit. And when you look at taxation from that viewpoint of you got to give some of it back, it's exactly what you're doing. Is you're giving it back to Uncle Sam.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But that's one version of means testing. Another, could be a simple earnings limit that gets extended beyond full retirement age. Right now, if you file for benefits and you're between the ages of 62 and your full retirement age, there's a limit on the amount of money that you can make. Now, I don't have the dates in front of me, but up until I think it was in the 80s, maybe the 70s, that earnings limit was much steeper and it extended for a longer period. And in the
Okay.
very early days of Social Security, the earnings limit was there completely. There was never a time when the earnings limit was lifted. In fact, the rule said that if you have any income from other sources, you could not get Social Security. And then they raised it up to 500. And it wasn't until years down the road that they started working it back based on your age.
Okay.
So if
I
they
didn't know
simply
that.
just said, "Hey, we're gonna put this earnings limit in place and we're going to extend it out," I think that would be another form of means testing. But frankly, I do think that it's going to come back to some system of being means tested. I think that's low hanging fruit. It's
Yeah.
really easy for them to use that because there's just not that many people that there's not enough that would be affected by it to vote them out of office.
Yeah.
Frankly,
That makes sense. This question here about, this should be an easy one to answer, but from Tim, is the trust fund limited in what it can invest in? It sounds like it's just government debt. Is there an opportunity to invest it more aggressively?
well, there was, and
Bush
I'm
too,
actually
right? Wasn't his proposal to privatize? Or am I making that up?
no, you're not. But here, the funny thing is, and I'm trying to figure out how in the world can I get off of this slideshow. Oh, right here. I'm going to go back to, if I stop the share, I wonder what that'll do.
The world will stop spinning. Oh, there we go. Looks like it
Okay.
worked. There we go. Okay, cool. I see you.
Perfect. So the first person that I, to my knowledge at least, that suggested investing a portion of the trust fund. And listen, if we would have taken this advice and if they would have passed this through, we would not have the trouble today that we're having with a trust fund.
Yeah.
The first president that I know of that suggested this was given the State of the Union address, and he suggested it was Bill Clinton. Now, years later, when Hillary was running, she was completely against the privatization, as they called it, of Social Security. But all President Clinton was saying was, listen, we need to take a part of this and invest it over here because the returns we're getting just aren't adequate, and it's going to give us trouble down the road.
Sure.
And then when Bush Jr. came along, it was part of his plan as well. And by that point, it was just demonized, and it could never take off.
So for now, I guess to answer Tim's question, the only thing the trust fund could be invested in is a special issue government debt, and all of it needs to be invested in that. They can't selectively choose just to do something. Okay.
No,
Great.
That's it.
Another sort of related question about this pay-as-you-go concept while we're on the topic. Where to go here? Okay, so not more pension related, but I think this is an interesting topic to keep in mind because people often view Social Security as like their own account or they're entitled to it. I paid in, this is money I will get. And it's important to know it's effectively a social welfare system. Anyway, the question is from Pearl, isn't it also true that it would be illegal for a private pension fund to operate like Social Security since no monies paid in are reserved for future retirees? Like this goes to like people call Social Security Ponzi scheme, which actually gives me the heebie-jeebies because it's just so not true. But I sort of see where people are coming from, and I think this is belying Pearl's question, this concept. So, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, first, I think that's you're probably better suited to answer the question on pensions and how they're set up than I am. It's just something I don't know, a whole lot about with pensions. But
okay.
I don't know of another system that's set up exactly like Social Security out there. I just don't. But I know that there's some pensions which have their own challenges as well.
Yeah. Not to get too off topic, but for what it's worth, Pearl, my view is like this. Pension, you're correct. You pay in, there's strict rules in place that a certain amount has to be reserved for all the retirees to meet however many decades of obligations. Social Security is not quite the same way. I sort of view it, and Devin, you may want to slap me for saying this, but like, I sort of view it like property tax. You live in a town, you pay the tax because they say you have to. You may not get much, if any, direct benefit out of it. You know, if you have 4 kids in the school, guess what? You're making out well from what you're paying in. If you have no kids in the school district and you have private garbage pickup and whatever, you're paying a lot in, but not getting much out. There's no sense of you paid in X amount, so you therefore will get Y amount of benefit. It's just kind of this honor system is a bad word, but I'm having trouble verbalizing this, but you see what I'm saying, Devin? You know, is that an accurate view of Social Security?
Sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And in fact, it's one of the myths that we're going to tackle here in a moment, is that Social Security is an earned right, when the truth is it's just simply not.
Yeah. Okay.
So I am going to hit that here in a moment.
Okay. Just sifting through the other few questions here for a second. So there's a few about means testing we touched on in a few different ways. Other comments about interesting question from Cody. So Devin, for options to keep Social Security benefits fully funded, is increasing full retirement age secondary to decreasing benefits, mean testing, or increasing taxes? We kind of hit on this, but you know, what's your gut feeling about what's most likely to be moved most?
I don't think they'll ever increase full retirement ages. I just don't. And the truth is, that's probably something they should consider when you look at longevity, right? Longevity, since the Social Security system was launched back in 1937, has changed drastically. People are living longer, and yet full retirement ages have only increased by 2 years.
Yeah.
And yet longevity has increased many times more than that. But if you increase full retirement age, then you have the problem of, do you leave early retirement in the same situation, right? So if you increase full retirement age, do you still leave early retirement at 62? And if you do, those reductions that happen start to get really sharp. And all of a sudden, instead of someone getting 70% of their full retirement age benefit, are they going to get 50% of it?
Right.
You know, and at that point, what does that do for poverty? And is that going to help? Because people are just going to file as soon as they possibly can. That's what 1/3 of everyone who files for Social Security will do. So, you know, should full retirement age increase? Probably so. Is it going to help? It's hard to know.
Right. There'll be other knock-on effects. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We got one other random question we'll sort of save to the end here. It doesn't tie into anything we talked about yet. So let's roll on with number 4.
Rolling on. Do you see my screen again?
I do. Yes.
All right. I have figured out twice how to make this work. Fantastic.
Yeah, we are tech titans.
Yes, we are. All right. Myth number 4. Members of Congress don't use Social Security. And this is something I get when I'm talking about Social Security and politics comes up. They'll say, well, if congressmen had to pay into it, if this was their system, and if they were getting Social Security benefits, then this thing would get fixed in a hurry. And the truth is, they do. They absolutely do. In fact, since 1984, you can go back and look at the rule that was put into place. All members of Congress, military, just about all federal employees started to contribute to Social Security. Before that, they didn't. But, neither did most of your federal employees either. So that's, that's just not true. That congressmen, senators, federal employees, they are paying into Social Security.
And they don't get any special benefit calculation or extra Social Security. They get the same formula that everyone else has applied to them, correct?
That's right. Okay. That's right. I mean, in addition to that, they have a pension with the federal employee retirement system. They have a thrift savings plan as well. But that's no different than what you'd find in a public employer, or a private employer rather. So,
or at least those that still have generous pensions. But yes, I mean that's unrelated to Social Security, though. I guess is the main takeaway here. Okay.
Certainly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And was it when 84, when this came in place, was it optional for them to pay into Social Security, or it was required for everyone at that point?
No, there was a period where, for certain employees who were already in the old civil service retirement system, they had an option of staying there. And then certain employees were mandated to move, but all new employees, they had to start contributing. They didn't have a choice.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. All right. Now, myth number 5.
Yes.
Effectively, it's a bad investment. It's what we hear, Social Security is a horrible investment. Dave Ramsey's one of the ones that really perpetuates this. He really likes to talk about what an awful investment Social Security is and how if he could, he would opt right out of it. But,
Yeah. Don't get me
you
started
know,
on him. He also promotes heavy feed, active managed mutual funds.
Yeah.
Partly because people pay him to advertise them, so he's not the most. I'll stop there. But anyway,
Yep,
I
yep.
have mixed feelings about him at best.
I understand why. This is one though that I've heard for years, and so it wasn't long ago I decided I'm going to dive into this and figure out some of these numbers. And there's not a perfect way to do it. A lot of my number nerds that follow my YouTube channel, kind of took issue with the way that I did this, but I wanted to look at a simplified approach to, am I going to get back the dollars that I put in? And how does that compare to the dollars that I'll take out?
Yep.
And I only want to look at the taxes that I put in. I personally put into Social Security too, not my employer. If I'm a W-2 employee, there's some that they're putting in, but I only wanted to look at how much am I putting into this. So, here's the general breakdown of FICA taxes. If you're an employee, the total FICA tax is 15.3%. And on one side, you have the employee tax. On the other side, you have the employer, and you'll notice that those numbers are all the same. So it's 7.65 for the employee and 7.65 for the employer that has to pay in. But an employee only has to pay in Social Security tax 6.2%, and that's the amount that I counted here. Okay.
Yep.
So that way, when somebody says, Devin, I'll never get back the dollars that I put into Social Security, this was about as accurate as I could figure it.
Okay.
And so I wanted to look at an individual who started working in 1972. They retired. I believe this is in 2019. And I wanted to, and I know that's a long time to be in retirement, but I wanted to give an opportunity, or that's a long time to work rather, but
Sure.
you'd want to give a long lifetime to pay in as much in taxes as you could. And then I looked at 4 different income scenarios in that period. I looked at the National Average Wage Index as my baseline. And you'll see that down there at the bottom. It says NAWI. That's the National Average Wage Index. So I looked at 50%, so an individual who earned half of the average wage index, an individual who earned right at the average wage index, then 150%, and then someone that just earned the maximum amount that's taxable for Social Security on an annual basis.
Okay.
So we have all 4 scenarios in here. And so here's what we have. The blue bars are the dollars that those individuals would have paid in taxes based on that 6.2%.
Yep.
And over their age 66 to 85 and using a 2% annual cost of living adjustment, you can see the orange bars are the dollars that they would receive from Social Security. So it's really hard for me to believe that you're not going to get your money back out of this system.
Now, couple questions here. Same question, and I thought about this as well. And I think your charts answer this. So self-employed persons like myself, I have my own financial planning / investment management business. Well, guess what? I'm the employee and the employer.
Right.
So I pay 6.2 plus 6.2 on behalf of myself. A couple of people asked, do you also get back the employer 6.2? And just looking at your graphs, it looks like the benefit received is already more than double what you paid in. So just double the blue bar, and your orange bar still more than covers it, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, but that then raises the additional question. Okay, what if you could take both the employee side, the 6.2, and the employer side? So now you have a collective 12.4, and along the way you invest it. Now that gets beyond the scope of our conversation today, but at that point, if everything went right, you could break even between the amount you put in and the amount that you receive out of it. If everything went wrong, it's a pretty generous system at the end of the day.
And this graph shows that, and I think it makes it clear why the system's strained, because it's overly generous on average, right?
Yeah.
Now, granted, some people, I guess worst case scenario, you're single, you work your whole life, you die a month before you're 62, so you don't get to see a lick of Social Security. So everything you paid in, you get nothing out of it, right?
Right.
So it's
That
not a
happens
fair
too.
system per se, but
Right.
yeah. Okay. Wow. That's a really eye-opening graph. I like that one. Thanks. Okay.
Well, I know you're a numbers guy, so let's not spend too much time on it or you'll pick it apart.
All right, next move.
All right. Yeah.
Myth 6.
All right. Myth number 6, Social Security is an earned right.
Ooh.
Now, this, I interviewed Congressman John Larson here on my YouTube channel. And this is something he was very fond of saying. And he said it several times in our interview that, the individuals have a right to their Social Security. And it's something that, that I've heard repeated over and over from politicians on both sides. And as nice as it would be, is just not the case.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, Social Security payments are not guaranteed, and the laws can be changed at any time that's going to impact what an individual is going to receive in benefits. Now, some people say, Devin, that's fear mongering, but it's not. It's the truth. It's the way that the law is now written. They can increase taxes on your Social Security benefits. They can stop benefits for certain people. There's a number of different things that they can do. And, I can absolutely see legislated in the future to change your right to Social Security. But I do understand why some people think there is a right to these Social Security benefits. If you look at this is a pamphlet from 1936 from the Social Security Administration, and it says the United States government will set up an account for you. The checks will come to you. What's that? As a right. Oh, goodness gracious. That makes it pretty clear to me that there is a right. Sounds fairly rock solid, but
right. Yeah.
It didn't take too long before that got clarified by the Supreme Court. There were a couple of cases, and we don't have to go into all of these, but some of these were interesting cases. This was one case where they said that, the proceeds of both taxes are to be paid in and are not earmarked in any way, which that case right there did away with the idea that I think Pearl may have been asking us about a moment ago. And that was, is there an account set up that these funds are going in of some sort? And they're not earmarked in any way for any certain individual. When those monies go in, they go in strictly for the purpose of paying current beneficiaries. But then there was another case, and this is a very interesting case, Fleming versus Nestor. This was a guy that got caught being a part of the Communist Party. And
don't want to do that. Usually not good.
No, not back. I mean, now I can imagine there would be any repercussions for it.
Yeah.
Not like this, but then they deported this guy. Yeah. And he had worked in the United States for years, and they sent him packing back to wherever he was from. And so he sued the government, and he said, hey, I should still be able to get my Social Security benefits. And they said, no, you shouldn't. And in their opinion, they said, a number of things, but, one of the things is that, some people suppose that their FICA payroll taxes entitle them to a benefit in a legal contractual sense. And then they go down there and they say the right to alter, amend, or repeal any provision of this act, meaning the Social Security Act, is hereby reserved to the Congress. So, I mean, that really opened up the ability of the federal government to go in and modify these benefits. And so you're paying in these taxes. And I'm not saying you're not going to get a benefit. Again, it's not scare tactics at all, but I am saying that you probably ought to pay attention to the Social Security Administration statements that they put out when they use this language, that Congress has made changes to the law in the past, can do so at any time, because they can.
Right.
But ultimately, if you read on your Social Security statement, it'll also say something to the effect of Social Security benefits are not intended to be your sole source of retirement income. And, it's unfortunate, but a lot of people, that is their sole source of retirement income.
Yeah. And that's what sort of drives my belief that I can't fathom they would ever take money away from people who are on it or close to it. Now, for better or worse, Social Security is so ingrained as for many people, the sole source of income in retirement. But for most other people, it's at least a significant chunk of the foundation of their, retirement finances. So to take money away from people who are receiving it or really close to it and are already, planned accordingly and kind of banking on it, I just can't see it happening. But again, who knows? It's all subject to change based on law.
No, I don't think so either. Not in a broad sense. I don't think it's going to be broadly applied like that. But I do think there are some individuals out there. For example, Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett receives a Social Security benefit. Now, there are those who make the argument that Warren Buffett doesn't need his Social Security benefit. But you could also go back and look at, there's a lot of cases out there that say, no, it's not based on need.
Yeah.
It's actually based on the fact that he paid in taxes and thus should receive a benefit. But to say that he has a right to that benefit, we've just been able to show maybe that's not the case either.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Are we ready for myth number 7, the last and final?
One last thought about the what you pay in versus what you get. Now, I know we're one myth behind here, but so that doesn't include spousal benefits or other ancillary benefits off your record, right?
No, it does not.
Okay. So the payout's even more generous when you add in benefits of spouse or survivor benefits or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. All right. Myth number 7.
There we go. I was waiting on that. Everyone should delay filing to age 70.
Now, shouldn't they?
I do hear this. And unfortunately, Andy, I hear this from a lot of finance folks like us. Now, when you look at it on paper, it makes sense, right? For someone who has a full retirement age at 66, they can receive 32% more by simply waiting 4 years. So on paper, it does seem to make sense to delay because more is always better. But I do think there's a lot of scenarios where filing early makes more sense than filing later. You want to hear some of them?
I would love to.
First of all, it's pretty simple. If you need the income, I've had people come into my office before and say, Devin, I need Social Security advice. And they'll start going through the story. Well, look, I lost my job. I've had to spend my 401k to bail my kids out of jail or whatever. And what should my strategy be? I'm like, well, you don't have any income. You just need to go file. I mean, there's no waiting about it. So if you need the income, there really isn't a lot of strategy. You got to go file for benefits. So waiting to 70 may be nice, but it's probably not going to happen.
Not practical. Yeah. Okay.
But when we get into the real strategies here, if you're single and have health issues, we talk a lot about strategy for married couples, but if you're single, you really only have your own income needs and your own life expectancy to consider. This is really one of the few times that I recommend to people they should use this break-even analysis, where it tells you at the age at which you'd have to live till to get the same benefits as filing at a later age, and when those intersect and those break even. So that's if you're single with health issues, you just need to kind of figure out, okay, how long do I think I'm going to live? And that's the one time where you should use that break-even analysis.
Okay.
The third thing is there's some different spousal issues here. If your spouse is the higher earner and they have health concerns, that's certainly one thing to consider. So if they're older than you and their benefit is not as high as the amount they can receive as a spousal benefit, it could make sense to file and open up your work record to pay a spousal benefit. So let's, there's a few examples we could go through, but I don't want to get too wadded up in this stuff.
Yeah,
but
there's a lot of what ifs and iterations you can come up with here.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of rabbit trails we could chase down. The next thing is if your spouse is the lower earner, but they're older than you. All right. So if you have a spouse that's the lower earner, they're probably going to get part of their benefit from your spousal payment that comes off of your benefit, which they can't receive until you file for benefits.
Yeah.
So you have to do some calculations about, okay, I know I'm delaying my filing decision, but in doing so, how much am I really gaining effectively? Because, I'm also, by delaying mine, I'm also missing out on extra payments that would go to my spouse. And the other thing is if they're substantially older than you, you got to remember that spousal payments don't increase after full retirement age. And so, I've seen individuals that are saying, hey, I'm waiting until 70. Their spouse is 4 or 5 years older than they are. And that's all they're going to receive is a spousal payment. And that's, $1,200 per month they're leaving on the table by not filing. It's going to take a while to catch up, even with a 32% increase.
Interesting. Okay. Yep.
Then if you have a survivor's benefit, a few years ago, there was some filing strategies that were shut down for almost everyone except surviving spouses. And the surviving spouse benefit still allows for switching back and forth. So, you could file for your survivor's benefit at 62 or really even 60 and switch back to your own benefit at 70, at which point it would have grown to, by at least 24%.
Right.
Depending on your full retirement age. If it's at 67, if it's at 66, then, 32%. And, when it makes sense, a variation of that can also be done in reverse. So if you have a spouse that's deceased and you're going to meet the requirements for a survivor benefit, you don't need to just automatically delay your benefit because you think that's going to increase it. You need to slow down, make sure you have your facts, and carefully consider what you should do. And
Right.
the last one here is if you have minor or disabled children at home, those children could qualify for a benefit when you file. So by delaying your filing decision, you're missing out on your own reduced benefit plus the benefit payable to your child. So just, you got to keep in mind that if you file before full retirement age, the earnings limit is going to apply.
And what's the earnings limit, Devin, for those in the audience here?
For 2019
or conceptually, what does that mean?
So yeah, the Social Security Administration simply says that if you're under full retirement age, there's only a certain amount of money you can have in earned income and collect a Social Security benefit. And in 2021, that's going to be $18,960, except for a small window of time.
Okay. Got it. So if you're under full retirement age, you're working, you have wages or self-employment income, and receiving your benefit will be reduced if you make over $19,000 roughly for the year. Okay.
That's right.
So a question related to, you made it clear in this last myth here that there's a lot of different things you have to consider when starting your benefit. Don't always delay till 70. Logical question from Joel: what Social Security planning tools do you recommend? Bonus, if they are free or low cost. Now, the best tool I know is the brain of Devin Carroll. Can't quite neatly put that into a package, but what tools do you use, or what do you recommend to someone looking for tools to make their own decision?
So I've heard a lot of good things about Lawrence Kotlikoff software, Maximize My Social Security.
Okay.
And then I've heard some things about it that were mixed results as well. For an individual, I'm going to plug myself for a minute if I can, Andy. That's not not what we're here for, but there is a consultation that you can do with me if you really need some help, either unraveling a Social Security issue that you're having, or just need to get your stuff double checked and make sure that you're on the right path.
Okay.
Other than that, there's some other great people. Andy, I know, man, you're one of the brighter minds out there
thank you.
in Social Security. And so your Facebook group alone is going to be worth a lot.
Well, thank you. And for people who are interested in consultation with you, how do they go about that, Devin?
Yeah. So if you just go to socialsecurityintelligence.com, which is where I blog about Social Security, up at the top in the menu, you can see a bar that says, I'm trying to remember what it says.
It says something.
Yeah. Something like schedule a consultation with Devin or get Devin's help or something like that.
Okay.
And you can just go through there and get that help there.
Cool.
And it'll tell you all about it, what's required, so on and so forth.
Got it. So we have a sort of mixed bag of random questions here, Devin. Anything else to comment on with, was that a wrap for your 7 myths?
You know what it is.
Okay.
Let's call that a wrap.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Just
Nope.
I thought that was 7. Okay.
Nope. I think that's good.
So for people in the audience here, if you do have, random Social Security questions, drop them in. We won't keep Devin too long, but while he's here, we'll really squeeze him for everything he's worth with some questions. So we got a few about windfall elimination provision.
Oh, I love talking about that.
It's a crowd favorite. One is, I guess, what is it? And second question was some buzz about Biden recommending some changes, perhaps.
Right.
Go.
Right. Okay. So the windfall elimination provision is simply it's an alternate calculation of your Social Security benefits if you You have earned a Social Security benefit from work where you paid into Social Security, which is
Okay.
required to get a Social Security benefit. But you've also had work where you did not pay into Social Security and you earned a pension from that job.
Okay.
All right. So both of those have to be correct. You not only had that employment, but you earned a pension from that as well.
Got it.
And so for 2021, the windfall elimination provision penalty is $498 roughly to your benefit. And here's the big shocker, Andy. A lot of people don't know this. When they get their benefits estimate, let's say that you worked for 20 years as an engineer, and then you went and you were a school teacher for the next 25.
Yep.
And you're getting your Social Security statement, you're sitting down with your financial planner and you're saying, all right, these are the amount of benefits that I'm going to receive. That's wrong. You're not going to receive that amount of benefits because you have a pension coming from non-covered work. And if you get down into the language in the Social Security benefits estimate, it says that this amount may not be accurate if you have a pension from non-covered work or something like that.
Yeah.
So at its heart, the windfall elimination provision is just an alternate calculation of your benefits. And roughly this year, it's going to be $498 that it's going to impact you by.
Okay.
Now, as far as the language coming from Biden about potentially doing away with the windfall elimination provision, all of the stuff in his provision made sense to me. And I'm talking about not that I agreed with it or disagreed with it, but it all worked in terms of what he was saying, except for that one component. There was some language in there that just didn't make sense. He referenced this 10-year rule, and with the windfall elimination provision, there isn't a 10-year rule of any sort. Now, he may have been talking about 10 years to be vested in a teacher's retirement system, but every state's different. So I've had a number of people suggest things that he could have been talking about, but I really don't know what he was talking about. Furthermore, he suggested getting rid of the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. The last time they suggested getting rid of the WEP and GPO, we'll just shorten it down and call it that. They were going to get rid of it, but they were going to replace it with a new formula. And it was called the public servant fairness formula. And it frankly was not a good replacement for the windfall elimination provision. It would have worked well for some people, but it would have ended up dragging a lot of other people into a reduction on their Social Security benefits.
Okay.
So that I really don't know what they were suggesting with it, but I can't imagine for a moment that they were suggesting just completely getting rid of it.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. Question from Ted about the earnings wage limit. Do capital gains factor into it?
No.
Do not. Okay.
No.
So purely just our earned income. So wages or self-employment, right? Okay.
That's right.
Do pensions count in that figure?
No.
No. Okay. So one RIA, so that's a registered investment advisor. One RIA suggests that if one does not need Social Security, then one should file early. Do you agree? I guess not need it meaning you have substantial size portfolio, perhaps, but what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it depends, there's so many different factors, and it's that sort of rule of thumb advice, those broad blankets that are thrown out. I mean, there's, I've talked to a lot of people who have a lot of assets who have different circumstances that get them to file at different points. However, with that being said, I will say that the decision about when to file relatively becomes less important the more retirement income and assets you have. Right.
Yeah.
Because if Social Security is 80% of your retirement income, you really got to be a good steward of that and make sure. But if it's 10%, then it's not going to make as big of a difference if you make a misstep and file at 66 instead of 64 or whatever.
Right. Okay. So not necessarily go ahead and file as early as possible. I guess the answer is always it depends, but
it is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Less important, not less important, but not as vital of a decision to get right if you do have substantial assets relative to your income needs. Okay. Here's a good one. Filing strategy. When spouses are over a decade apart, and this is from Ileana, when spouses are over a decade apart, what's the general recommendations on Social Security filing then?
So it depends on if the higher earner is the older spouse or the younger spouse.
Okay.
You know, and the inverse also obviously being true. That's going to change things up, you know, substantially. If the lower earning spouse is the older spouse, then it goes back to what we said a moment ago.
Yeah.
The higher earning spouse may need to consider filing earlier just in order to open up their work record for the older, lower earning spouse to receive a spousal benefit.
Yeah, I guess that's a real important point, and you touched on it a few times. But for anyone out there, you know, thinking about getting benefits off your spouse while your spouse is still alive, you can't get spousal benefits until your spouse starts his or her benefits, right?
Yeah.
That's what unlocks the door for you to then go claim as a spouse off of that person's record.
Right.
So that's why it impacts the decision. Okay. Quick question, and someone looks like they responded, but Katrina asked basically about railroad benefits. I have a friend who retired after working for the railroad. I don't believe she will receive Social Security, only receives a pension. Why is this set up like this?
Yeah, so that goes way back with the Railroad Retirement Board set up to where they didn't contribute to Social Security. But then, like a lot of the educators and other public servants, firefighters, so on and so forth, in many cases, they work other jobs where they have a Social Security benefit coming in. Yeah. But for that, there is an offset that comes into play. So, yeah, in many cases, they don't receive any Social Security benefits at all.
Okay. It's just the way it's structured, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Random sort of thought, I guess, from Dan, going back to FICA taxes. If employer didn't have to pay FICA, wouldn't they be able to pay you more in salary, all things remaining the same?
But would they?
Yeah, right. All things remaining the same, sure, I guess they could, but would they?
Right.
Yeah. Wouldn't count on it. Okay.
Well, and Dan, to Dan's point, I actually had that question come up quite a few times with people saying, yeah, but that's money you would have received in your paycheck. And, you know, I don't, as an employer, I'm just not so sure about that.
Yeah.
You know, if I didn't have to pay, I don't know that I would just give that to my employees. I'm not sure. I'm a generous guy, but there's limits.
Yes. Right. Everyone's got their limits. Another one or two questions here. So question from Anwisha, Devin, can he cover what was wrong with the benefit of the folks he helped correct the mistake for?
So it's pretty fresh. So I don't want to go into too much detail. You never know who's listening, right?
Sure,
I don't want to give them away their private information, but I will tell you that it came down plain and simple to the Social Security Administration not calculating their benefit correctly. So let's step back for a minute and talk about this, because I think this is important. Andy, a lot of our clients that we help, they love their jobs. And they don't necessarily just want to retire, go home, sit in the chair and watch CNN or Fox News, right? That's just not their idea of a good time. So what do? They keep working. In many cases, they keep working after they file for benefits. Okay. And when that happens, if those earnings years are replacing any of the other highest 35 years in their benefits calculation, their retirement benefit is supposed to be recalculated.
Okay.
It's supposed to be an automatic process too, but it doesn't always happen that way. Now, for this individual, not only was it his benefit that had to be recalculated, but his wife was receiving a benefit from him, as was his disabled child. And so that means that if they weren't recalculating his benefit correctly, the others weren't receiving the correct benefits either.
Yep.
And unraveling that is almost impossible to do, because you have to go back and subtract out cost of living adjustments, subtract out lump sum payments, because early on the Social Security Administration caught some of their own mistakes and said, hey, we're going to send you this lump sum to make up for this. And it just gets completely convoluted, but
sure,
you know, you can go back and undo it.
Okay. That's awesome. Good to know. All right. Looks like that is it for the questions. Just taking another look here. Yes, that is it. So Devin, greatly appreciate it. I know you can't see these comments, but lots of great feedback. Thank yous. This has been
Good.
very informative, et cetera, from people here. So a smashing success, I would say.
Well, I'm glad you had me on, Andy.
My pleasure. And again, definitely check out Devin's YouTube channel. It's just Devin Carroll, the man, the myth, the legend.
Yep, I think you
all
can
about
just find
Social
me there.
Security. Where else can people go to find out more about you if they want to work with you, or check your content you put out?
Yeah, so the YouTube channel,
Yep.
you've already mentioned that. That's going to be the main place. My blog, socialsecurityintelligence.com,
Okay.
is the other place. But other than that, it's just full of, both of those sites are full of good free content that's not going to cost you anything to go there and hopefully learn a lot.
Yeah, and what I like about yours, first of all, the video production is amazing. The stuff I do, pretty janky and basic. It's sort of, it is what it is. I like to think the content's good, but the delivery is eh. But in addition to you having top-notch video quality, what I really like about yours is you do lots of current things. Like if there's news about Social Security or potential changes, or when the trustees report comes out, like you're on top of it with current things. It's not just the same old stale, here's how you calculate your benefit that you can find at 1,000 other different sources.
Right.
You really bring it to life. So
yeah,
thank you
for whatever reason. I don't know why, Andy. I really don't. Listen, I'm kind of a country boy at heart. I literally have a tractor and chickens. Okay. So this comes as a surprise to a lot of people when they see me on my YouTube channel, and I wear a coat and I'm professional, but I'm a country boy. And I'll tell you though, there's something about Social Security that reached in back in 2012 and grabbed me, and I started studying this, and it just hasn't let go since. I don't know why, but the nuance of some of these rules just really capture my attention.
That's great. And you do a fantastic job of really making it digestible and easy to understand. And you hit on all the stuff that should be explained to people. So thank you for that and all you do.
Yes, sir.
All right. With that, we'll wrap it. So again, thank you very much. Super happy to have you on. Appreciate the time. The crowd loved it. You can't see it, but I know they're standing up cheering, doing the wave, and wanting an encore. So thank you, Devin. And with that, we will call it a wrap. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Andy.
All right. Take care, all.